Well, good morning, Albuquerque. It is great to see such a full room to support CLN Kids. So I want to thank all of you for coming out this morning and for all of your dedication, whether it's your first time helping CLN Kids or you've been with them since the start. This is one of the truly remarkable programs in our city. And it needs our support time and time again, and that's what we're here to do. So I want to share a couple of thoughts as your mayor. Firstly, that CLN Kids, we're proud as a city to be a partner with CLN. So they run a little bit of our early Head Start programs, and we work together on our rapid housing, rehousing program. And I mention these two programs because, as Aaron stated in the beginning, I hope that over the next 4 years we can drastically scale these efforts. I think there are a couple of areas in Albuquerque where we've really got to double down, and one of them is around homelessness for kids at risk and early childhood education for them. So this is such an important piece of not only why I ran for this job, but hopefully I think what is this quintessential point in our city where we have a chance to stop in its tracks a path that can go totally the wrong direction. So CLN, I believe, actually does a whole lot of things for us, but it's essentially that intersection point where we save not only in many ways that individual life, that child, but the family around them. And by extension, we see what happens when unfortunately kids grow up in unfortunate circumstances, we save our community. This is, I believe, one of the highest return on investment programs that we have in Albuquerque. And that's why I believe that we've got to really focus and double down on these initiatives. So I want to share with you a little bit about what the city is doing. Firstly, we have new leadership in our Family and Communities department. And for those of you who are familiar with city services, social services at the city, our department that handles it is called the Family and Community Services Department. It's kind of an innocuous name for everything social service related. But we're doing some big things in that department. We have a new director, Carol Pierce is her name, and we've broken that department up into specific divisions to really focus on the key needs facing our city. And so for the first time in decades, our city actually has a housing and homelessness division again. And we have somebody who's in charge of it. Her name is Lisa Huval, who I think many of you have met. There was an announcement earlier this week in the paper. But we're setting up these divisions inside the department to map to these needs. And so we also have a behavioral health and addiction services division and a deputy director in charge of that. His name is Gilbert Ramirez, trained social worker. And then we are also having, for the first time, an education division. And so that education division is going to comprise after-school programs, summer programs, and early child development. So that is a whole new way of looking at what our city does. And I know when I first came into office, I said, well, where's the division that works on homelessness? There wasn't one. You know, and then I was like, well, who's in charge of all our education stuff? There isn't one. We were just set up basically as a fiscal agent who manages subcontracts. So, you know, we were doing a lot. It's not to take away from the good services, including helping CLN Kids, that we've been doing. But from a city's perspective, we weren't really focused on policy, and we weren't really driving an agenda. We were actually just trying to sort of financially support good organizations like CLN Kids. So we want to continue to do that, but we're layering on top of that an actual policy lens for those areas, for housing, homelessness, for behavioral health, and for education. That, I believe, will hopefully be able to address the key needs of our city going forward. Now, I think we also have some city councilors in the audience. I want to thank them for funding all of these programs. And let's give them a round of applause. They've been very good with CLN. And I think I see Councilor Gibson and Councilor Trudy Jones right there. My apologies if I'm missing anyone else. But these two are true champions for this program. And we are working together on a budget. We were together long into the night last night on a budget that is actually going to double down literally on these programs. So I want to tell you a little bit about it. Right now we spend about $15 million on affordable housing contracts. We spend about $8.2 million on homeless services, transitional housing, and emergency shelters, and providing non-officer emergency response support to homeless folks. But in the budget that we submitted to council that we're working on together, we have enough funding and programs in there to actually double the access to successful before school, after school, summer, and early childhood programs to keep our kids off the streets, out of harm's way, and enriched. Doubling the number of children we can touch and help through the city of Albuquerque. That's our goal in this budget cycle, and hopefully by this summer we'll have that funded, and all those new folks that I just talked about can make it happen. So I'd like to share one more part before I hand over the stage here. I was thinking about CLN Kids model, and I got familiar with CLN Kids back when I was an international district state senator, almost 9 years ago now. And learning about the model, it's also fascinating to me that as much as we talk about challenges in our education system and the cracks that are actually gaping holes that our kids fall through, there's two things that I want to share with you on that point. The first one is that from a city's perspective, we are going to try and help our kids in every way that we can. And we're going to get over arguing with APS. So from the city perspective, we're going to leave behind the challenges that our school system might have, the challenges in the school day, the policy issues from Santa Fe that go into APS. We're going to leave that behind because at the city, we actually have no control over that anyway. I just want to help. I'm not going to blame anyone else any longer for challenges for our kids. I'm not going to wait for any other organization or the school district or the state to do what we can do to help our kids. So I believe the question we should ask ourselves is not like whose fault it is or who needs to do something else. It's how can we individually step up to help. You're all stepping up this morning to help with CLN Kids. As mayor, I'm stepping up to say, what can the city actually do to help? We can provide after school, summer, early childhood, and special programs for our kids. That's what I'm committed to. That's what I believe will actually move the needle for our kids going forward, at least from a city perspective. I believe that's what a mayor should be doing. Now, thank you. And lastly, CLN Kids, to me, is also in many ways a role model. And I know that's a little counterintuitive because a program that deals with such high-risk kids and homelessness, should not technically be a role model for every family or every school. But there are some real important lessons learned. And it's around that comprehensive care that we wrap around the child. So while it's a must, while it's a dire, almost emergency, it is really an emergency situation for children at CLN Kids, I think what we've learned is that for so many kids in Albuquerque, we have to do a similar program. We have to wrap around that comprehensive support services network, whether it's healthcare, whether it's dealing with issues that the parents might be having even in the home with respect to addiction, whether it's getting the kind of social supports that we need to wrap around that child. We just have to do that right now in Albuquerque. We might wish that it could be handled entirely by either families or by the nonprofit sector that'll just go away because the economy is going to come up. We can't wait any longer. We have to do as much of this as we can for our kids as soon as possible. That's where I believe CLN also leads the way. So with that, thank you so much for supporting this model, for supporting this program, and for believing in those children and giving them a chance. Thank you so much.